Be fun to
Welcome
find
to
out which one you'll
Walking
ask.
on the Ween Side. This is Ken Ween, and you're at It Matters Radio. And today I have a wonderful author, Carol Sletton. And Carol has written, among other things, this book, which is called Three Strong Western Women. And Carol, welcome to Walking on the Ween Side. Which of these three women would you have least liked to have been? And who are the three women?
Well, probably the one that I would least like to have been was Emma Lee. She was the first one in there. She was the 17th plural wife of John D. Lee, who was a famous Mormon. He was convicted and executed for the Mountain Meadow Massacre, and which was a terrible tragedy to her life because it happened just a few months before she married him. But she was a Mormon convert, but she was still magnificent. But I would not have liked to have been a plural wife.
No. For those of you who don't know what that means polygamy. That means that Mormons back in the 1840s had multiple wives. Of course, then in order to join the Union, the Mormon Church decided that was no longer acceptable. But there have been many Mormons who have left the Mormon faith and into offshoots over the years because they still believe in that. Of course, the most famous of them being the fellow from, what is it called? Something city. I'm forgetting, up on the North Rim.
Is it Arizona City?
Arizona City, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, in up on the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. And that's Warren Jeffs. And, of course, he's in jail for some of that stuff. Not so much the plural wives as that some of these wives were just little kids. And she went on, though. She continued to live her life after she moved away from the Mormon area of Utah and moved here into Arizona, as I recall. And where did she end up?
Well, she ended up in Winslow, Arizona, and she was really a fabulous person. I love writing about these interesting people, heroic people. She was a healer. She was real strong. She was a real positive person. And all through her life, she saved people's lives, and she made the best of her situation. She was strong physically and mentally. And she ended up in Winslow, and when she died, the whole town turned out for her funeral because she was known.
I have to ask this. They didn't hold the funeral standing on the corner, right?
Not that I know of. I don't think that there was that statue there yet.
Yes, and that's the most standing on the corner.
Right.
And all the girls go by. That was written about Winslow, Arizona.
Well, I don't think that's quite right. I think you're confusing that with another song, like
maybe.
Yeah, but anyway, but a nice old song. I like both of them. It's an interesting thing about that song. We're getting way off the subject, but I guess that song was the composer actually wrote it about Flagstaff, but he thought that Winslow sounded better, so he put Winslow there, and it's made Winslow famous. Lucky for Winslow, huh? Mm-hmm. But that's what we writers do.
That's what we writers do.
Sounds better.
Yes, we go with what sounds better. But you don't just do that. You write history. So who's the next woman in this trilogy of strong Western women?
Well, that was Minnie Gunther, and she was I don't think I would have liked to have been her either. She was only 20 when she left her house, her home in Wisconsin, and came to live on the Apache Indian Reservation.
Which Apache reservation is that?
At the Fort Apache Indian Reservation, and she lived there for over 60 years. Mm-hmm. And she was magnificent. She was also a healer, and she was strong, and she had a strong faith. I have to say that all three of these characters, the things they had in common besides being strong was where they were all healers. They were all turned positive things from tragedies, and they all helped other people a lot.
Mhm. And they all
as
had
the
strong
healers.
faith in something spiritual.
Yes, they did.
Yes.
Yeah, but they were very religious, but in very different ways
Yeah. And we're
from
going to
each
come
other.
back to that topic of religion because I know you're working on something. But let's just now. This woman, she married a man who was a missionary, and they had a joint mission, and they taught, and they healed, and they converted.
And they started an orphanage too, which was very needed.
Mhm.
And that orphanage actually went beyond their lifetimes into the I think it was the 1990s or something,
Yeah.
and it really saved a lot of children. So they did a lot of good. The opposite side of that, though, and I'm friends with some of the children of the family and everything, and the children continued to do good too. But the only thing was that they criticized the Apache culture and religion, and I think that was real damaging.
Yeah.
Because they do have a beautiful culture.
Oh, wonderful.
And that was damaging.
Yeah.
And I think towards the end of her life, Minnie Gunther realized that herself. She realized that was not. She even said that in some oral history interviews that I was able to hear before I wrote the play.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
one of the
both.
fascinating things about both of these women, though, is that they are, in a sense, moved through their lives by their marriages. And
True.
The third character does not marry.
That's right.
And she is also not white. She is an Apache.
Definitely, yeah.
And tell us a little about your third character in this wonderful book, by the way. Just to remind you folks, it's called Three Strong Western Women. It's by Carol Sletton. There's some background history in addition to the stories, but it's those three stories that really captured me. So who's the third of these women?
Well, the third character is Lozen, and she's an Apache woman warrior. She ended up riding with Geronimo, and she was also a shaman. And I used some oral history from the Apaches to write her story. Mm-hmm. When I was writing these stories, I would read everything I could from the point of view of these people's cultures. And so it was wonderful that there was a woman named Eve Ball, who was a New Mexican historian, who was able to interview a child who rode with Rosen. He was an old man by the time she interviewed him, but he was a child when he rode with Rosen when she was fighting the Americans. Mm-hmm. And by the time he told the story, she was almost a mythical figure. But it was just a beautiful story.
Now, of course, among the Apache don't exist. It's like the word Sioux. There is no such thing. It's something we created as a catchment.
Correct.
And the Apache don't call themselves Apache. They call themselves, I believe, Ne or Dene, sort of like the Navajo.
Yeah. That's right.
But now there are groups among the Apache. There are Mescalera, Chiricahua, etc. Do you know which particular group she was a member of?
She was from the Warm Springs Apaches. So she was born in New Mexico. Uh-huh. And it was a group that was closely related to the Chiricahua Apaches, which were the ones that resisted the American Army the longest. And she grew up in a beautiful area in New Mexico. And what you were saying about the Apaches, they were not all one people. They still aren't.
Right.
They had many different bands. Even if they lived real close to each other, they had small bands, and they were very individual in how they looked at things. And the American Army didn't understand that. That was part of the misunderstandings.
Another part of that misunderstanding is that to this day, the American government has never recognized the Chiricahua. And the Chiricahua are very involved in trying to reclaim their land in that area of New Mexico. I believe it's around Silver City, isn't it?
I think it is. I would like to go there. It's privately owned now. And what happened there was that there were some mining interests, and so whenever there was any mining, then the white people wanted to take the land from the Apaches or whatever group it was,
Yeah.
and so the bands of Apaches that lived closest to the rich areas for mining were the ones that lost the most. I live up in the White Mountains, and the White Mountain Apaches, there's no gold in them there hills around there.
Right, so they were pretty
they were
much
luckier.
alone. But if you go down further south to San Carlos, where there's a lot of copper, boy, among other things, as people first learned, actually, the first time it was covered on any national media, I believe, was on It Matters Radio, when we talked to somebody there about the use of Agent Orange as part of the genocidal attack on the Apache in San Carlos.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, which
I'm gonna have to look that up on your archive.
I tell you what, my friend who was on the show, if you want, I can help put you in touch with him, and he will be happy to discuss some of that with you. And one of the things that we really are still coming to terms with here in Arizona, and one of the reasons why I think it is so important for us to particularly recognize strong individual healing women, as these three women were, is that we have done so much damage and there is so much that needs to be corrected. Just recently, my wife and I were up in Durango, Colorado, and of course we were enjoying walking along and being beside the Animas River. Well, just what was it, a year ago? So the EPA inadvertently dumped all kinds of toxin into the Animas. And where does that go? Right into the Navajo reservation, where it affects their major agricultural area, which is Canyon de Chelly. So on that rather sad note, we're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to be back to talk a little bit more about Arizona, women, and history.
Moonshine. Night is young and the moon is high, little up on the ridge. It's gonna be a good night. South wind bringing in a summer breeze. Cut a little path through the sycamore tree. I know you got a little stash in a mason jar, but I'd rather get a buzz from shooting stars. Moonshine, a blanket of stars in our own spotlight. Moonshine, spin me around and hold me tight. I won't need another drink in my life if I got you and Miss Moonshine. Going too fast on a logging road, gonna get there quick, gonna dance real slow. Fire roars while the air gets cold, sparks will fly, we'll keep each other warm. Moonshine, blanket of stars in our own spotlight. Moonshine, spin me around and hold me tight. I won't need another drink in my life if I got you and this I know you got a little stash in a mason jar, but I'd rather get a buzz from shooting stars. Blanket of stars in our own spotlight. Spin me around and hold
Welcome back to Walking on the Wean Side, and welcome back to our discussion of Three Strong Western Women. This great book by Carol Sletton. And Carol, the book is available on Amazon, right?
It's on Amazon. It's in some Barnes and Noble stores. A lot of museums sell them, and some independent bookstores, and on my website.
Okay.
But
what's your website?
it's just my name, Carol Sletton. I'm giving you my. It's www.carolsletton.com, which is CarolSletten.com.
Okay. And well worth reading, folks. And I believe actually, now I went to a staged reading of this and really loved it. That's how I came in contact with it. But when I bought a copy, and when I did, I was told that some of the money from this is going to something. What was the money going to?
It's called Native Women Scholars Incorporated, and that actually started because of the play. We're currently helping 10 Apache women with their further education. 4 of them graduated this year, and so yeah, we are so thrilled with our scholars. Art can do things, and art. In this case, because we did the play up here and I wanted the money to go to some of my Apache neighbors for scholarships, a little group up in the White Mountains started this nonprofit organization, and every bit of money that we make goes towards the scholarships. So, so that's fun. It's not making me rich. The book is not making me rich, but it's making me very happy.
I think it's enriching a lot of us in many ways. And folks, I have to tell you, while it is a good read, it really was a fascinating watch. So why don't you talk a little about these performances and who's doing them and how are people reacting to them?
Well, they're keeping me pretty busy. The 3 acts in the play, there are 3 monologues. Each woman tells her own story from her own point of view. And sometimes I'll go to museums in Arizona, New Mexico, or other groups, or clubs or whatever, and just do one of the women's stories, and then it opens up the discussions for what those women's lives were like. But when I'm lucky enough to get 2 other actors to go with me, then we can do all 3 stories, and usually we have some music in between. I think that the one that you saw, we didn't.
You didn't have music, but you did all 3.
Yeah, and so I'll just play whichever part can't be played. If I have to do Lozen the Apache Woman Warrior, I don't do any makeup because it's not proper, But I'm really happy to say that we've got an Apache woman who plays that part magnificently. And it was a great honor because we were invited to do the performance on the reservation, and that was wonderful to know that I wrote something that people from that culture appreciate. Means a lot, because it's kind of a touchy thing writing about something from somebody else's culture. You want to be respectful, but you want to tell the truth. Fortunately, I was able to have that oral history that came from their culture, so it just kind of channeled through me, maybe.
Now, when you went onto the reservation, the White Mountain Reservation, I assume you meant, to perform, did you perform all 3 pieces, or?
Yes, we did. We performed all 3 pieces.
And what was their reaction? Not to the Apache woman, but to the missionary.
That was what was amazing, and I played that part. And I have to say that her character is probably the opposite of me, but I played that part, and there were people and Apache men that came up and hugged me afterwards, and that's not real common.
No, it certainly isn't.
It's not real common. I think perhaps that some of the men that came up might have known Minnie Gunther and her kindness. Mm-hmm. And so that was just amazing to me. But in this part that I play, that I wrote for her, a lot of what she tells is what happened to the Apaches and all the tragedies that happened to them. And because her outlook was, it wasn't so much about herself and what happened to her, it was what happened to her Apache friends, because she really did love them. And so looking into her life, I found a lot of love there. All three of them had a lot of love.
I was going to say, the strength of these women is not the kind of individualistic power kind of strength we talk about as strength often in our culture, but it is a different kind of loving strength. It is the capacity to care about, and through caring, to motivate others.
I think that's true, and to keep themselves going too. Mm-hmm. It was Minnie Gunther is in the Arizona Women's Hall of Fame because she saved many Apache lives during the Great Flu epidemic. She rode into their camps with a can of soup on one side of her horse and a can of milk on the other side of her horse. And she had 9 children. Mm-hmm. I don't know how, I just can't imagine what her daily life would be like and where she found the stamina. I just can't imagine.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Her husband predeceased her, didn't he?
Yes, he did. But he was loved, too, on the reservation.
But and she continued.
She continued living there. That was her home.
Yeah.
She and her one of her sons became a Lutheran missionary on the reservation, too. And he, just in the last, maybe, I think it was about 3 years ago, died. And he was a very loving man, too. They came from a synod. The Lutherans have different synods that have different beliefs. And they came from one of the synods that was the most intolerant of other beliefs. But they themselves, I think, were very tolerant individuals.
Now, one of these women became kind of famous throughout the country, didn't she?
Are you talking about Lozin?
No, the one who was recognized as nationally as Mother of the Year or something.
Oh, okay. Oh, Minnie Gunther. Yeah. She was National Mother of the Year, mm-hmm. And in 1967, and so and I guess they don't have that anymore. But that must have been a big deal in those days, and of course it totally surprised her, because that's not the kind of thing that she sought for herself. She was always thinking of things for her children and for her Apaches, and she also helped them economically, because she would buy some of their beautiful crafts. They were mostly known for their basket weaving.
Yes.
And they did very intricate baskets. Mm-hmm. And she would sell those to the outside world, and that would help them get some income. Mm-hmm. So, and her husband helped in practical ways too. Mm-hmm. So they were healers, and they helped, with them making a living.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, one of the things that I think that's very interesting whenever you read about missionaries anywhere, whether we're talking about the missionaries who went to India, to China, the ones who obviously, the vast majority of places, the missionaries become much more involved in the reality of life than in just preaching. The only place that I know of where the missionaries just seem to have been so preoccupied with God and their version of God that they really couldn't see the needs of the people were places like Hawaii, where I guess the people were living already so happily that it was more a question of, you shouldn't be happy.
It seemed like that from what I read too. Yeah. It's a shame. But yeah, one of the reasons maybe is that when missionaries go to those poor areas, they have to struggle to survive themselves. Yeah. Certainly Minnie did. They had to have gardens, they had to have healthy food. They were really cut off from the rest of the world, and so the realities of trying to survive themselves maybe made them more compassionate for their neighbors, I hope.
Speaking of surviving but not being quite so compassionate, let's go back and talk a little bit more about the Mormon trek out west.
Yes. And yeah.
Let's talk about that massacre. What was the reason for that massacre?
Well, it's very complicated, like most of these things are. But during that period of time, and that was 1857 when it happened, the Mormons had been kicked out of state after state, places after places, and in very violent ways by Americans. And they got to Utah, and they thought that they were going to be able to live the lifestyle that they wanted to, and they were almost ready to maybe get into war with the United States government. And they were very, very worried about non-Mormons, which they call Gentiles, coming in and taking over. So this wagon train came through from the south. It was very wealthy people, and they were on their way to California. Some of the leaders of the church either suggested or ordered, it's a little bit unclear now, even reading from the Mormon historians, the massacre of the people in this wagon train.
Did they just want to steal what they had, or were they afraid that this group might be settling in Utah and become a counter to their?
I think it was mostly fear. We see that today. People are so afraid of groups that are different from themselves that they react violently and without any judgment or reason. It's very scary. It's just a human thing. It's tribal in the worst sense of the word, in the sense of the word that other people that are different from us are evil, and we're the good people. God has chosen us and doesn't like the other people. I think.
Yeah, they didn't want any. If they perceived this group just passing through, they probably wouldn't have. That was my take on it. The other thing, of course, that really was kind of reprehensible was that the massacre was carried out in kind of disguise.
Exactly. Yeah, the Mormons that took part in it put war paint on and dressed like Indians.
Like Ute Indians.
But they did have some Indian allies that participated too.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'd like to say about this, though, is, it's a horrible thing. They killed everybody. They took away their guns first, and then they killed everybody except the tiniest of the babies. But that happened in 1857. My ancestors happened to be Lutherans from Scandinavia, but the Lutherans and Catholics in Germany did worse things much later than that.
Oh, of course.
So I want to say that all religions do these horrible things, and it's still happening today.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be judgmental about a religion that's not my own, and you have to kind of understand it.
Now, one of the things, just a aside about the Mormon Church, folks, if you don't know a lot about it, is that Carol had mentioned going to war with the United States. It's not clear who would have won, because Mormon men were rather good military. In fact, they had a whole division, I think it was, under Kearny during the Mexican-American War. They didn't go into Mexico, but they did go through the Southwest. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, that multiple marriages were so prevalent among the Mormons, and why they felt they were important was because a lot of the men were away, and they were afraid that a lot of men wouldn't survive in the military. So when this revelation of multiple marriages came about, it was, in a way, so that the people, the chosen people, the Mormons, would not die out. Of course, what they didn't realize was that then when the men came back, and as time went on, and as the ratio of the sexes became more even, it was going to produce other issues that are well worth maybe doing a radio show at some point about what is the cost and the benefit of polygamy. But that's a whole other topic, and we're not going to talk about that today, but we will be back after this to talk a little bit more about spirituality.
some good in this world. Separate all the swine from all of the pearls. I gotta do some good in this world of mine. Don't need a reason, just give me some time. I won't go out of my way for fortune or fame. But if they fell into my lap, you know I won't complain. Would I use them to further my aim and pay it all forward again and again? Wanna do some good in this world, separate all the swine from all of the pearls. Gotta do some good in this world of mine. Don't need a reason, just give me some time. I could raise up my hand, man the stations, open up my checkbook and make a donation. Or pick up my guitar, write a song about who we are and how we all belong. Wanna do some good in this world, separate all the swine from all of the pearls. Wanna do some good in this world of mine. Don't need a reason, just give me some time. Time thinking about me, and the rest of the time I just spend watching TV. I'm not looking for a pat on the back, just thinking about how I can pick up the slack. Wanna do some good in this world, separate all the swine from all of the pearls. Gotta do some good in this world of mine. Don't need a reason, just give me some time. Wanna do some good in this world, wanna do separate all the swine from all of the pearls. Gotta do some good in this world of mine. Don't need a reason, just give me the time.
Welcome back to Walking on the Wean Side. Carol, this is not Three Strong Western Women. It's not your first book. What was your first book?
Well, besides a book of poetry,
Yeah, okay.
it's Story of the American West, Legends of Arizona.
Ah,
Can you see it if I'm holding it now?
yep.
And that was I wrote that with my husband and co-author. Has a background in journalism, and it was an Arizona Centennial Legacy Project, and it starts with the geology of East Central Arizona goes up to World War II, Indian Wars, all kinds of fascinating things that happened in this part of the country, and how it spread the influence of that spread out to the world. So that was fun. Researched it for over 20 years before we wrote it.
And now you're working on a new project.
Well, yes, and it's actually not so new because I've been working on it off and on for years. But because it's one of those things where maybe I bit off more than I could chew, but I'm growing as I write it. It's called The Apache Jesus, and it's based on the life of an Apache medicine man that lived in our area. He was very influential, not only in our area, but all throughout Arizona and New Mexico. And he was a brilliant man. He did an alphabet. His ceremonies are still being done. His name was Silas John Edwards. I'm doing it as a historical fiction. I did a lot of research for it, but connecting the dots with things that people can understand is what's fun. I became interested in the story because years ago, when I was a reporter, I was invited to one of his ceremonies. I went to the ceremony, I was intrigued, but I felt like I didn't know enough about it to do justice to the story, so I didn't write the story. I just didn't feel like it was respectful enough. Then I started to learn more and more about this man, and I learned that he had been in prison for the murder of his wife on very flimsy evidence. And Earl Stanley Gardner, the mystery writer who wrote the Perry Mason series, took up his case and helped him get out of prison. So that was the murder story was what intrigued me. What it's ending up to be is what happened in Arizona at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century, culturally, to not only the Apaches but other groups, and how they survived and their religions. So it's like a odyssey, going through that. So, but I'm about 3/4 finished with that now.
Oh, very cool. And could you, in 1 or 2 sentences, tell us how that book has changed your life or your way of looking at the world?
I think it's really helped me become more open. I was pretty fortunate because I had a father who was a professor who had many international students when I was growing up. And so that started my vision of other people's worlds being just as important and sometimes more interesting than mine. But it's helped me understand the history of what happened, and maybe understand with compassion why groups are so different. And I want to tell the main thing I like to do is tell a good story. I'm a storyteller. And that's the main thing. I went back and I ended up reading a lot of things that I had in college, like Joseph Campbell, who wrote wonderful things about religion and myth. And so I think it's just helped me understand what has happened more, and maybe we all have to worry about our prejudices and try to fight them. I always do. But I hope it's helped me be a more open person to other people.
Well, I have to tell you, I was talking with a Native American friend of mine, a woman, who was also a journalist and writer, about this book, the Three Strong Western Women, the book we've been talking about today. And she said, that's wonderful, because among Native Americans, we know that culture is really something that is entrusted to women. We are the carriers. We are the ones who are responsible. And it seems to me that it is what you're doing by opening people up to understanding the interface in this book the interface between, for example, the Apache and the Lutheran minister, or the missionary, the Mormon who settles in non-Mormon. But also in your first book, the history of the clashes, and now in this new one where the spirit is, questions of spirit and the universality of spirit versus the segmentation of cult and specific faith. I think that you are helping to pursue that, if you will, feminist agenda that we should all be trying to pursue, that of honoring culture, remembering culture, but also opening our hearts and souls to those who are different, so that we can cross cultures without disrespecting them. And one of the things I noticed you mentioned a couple times, and just in doing your presentation, respect for the other, in your case, the Apache, and even the way you talked about the Mormon, the massacre, and recognizing, but it isn't just them. Let's not condemn. And I want to say that I felt very strongly as I read Three Strong Western Women, that you very much honor that tradition of what I call the true anima, the true female side of encompassing, accepting, loving, and understanding. And that was why, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted so much to have my guest today, Carol Sletton, come and walk on the Ween side. And I hope, folks, that you'll get yourself onto Amazon or find a Barnes or it has it, or order it from Carol's website. And I'm just going to spell out that website again so you can pick up her name at the same time. The website is www.carol, C-A-R-O-L, Sletton, S-L-E-T-T-E-N. And of course, on websites, there's no space between those, .com. www.carolsletton.com. And the book that I read that I enjoyed so much, and that I got to see Carol and two other actors do monologues from, is Three Strong Western Women. Get yourself a copy and enjoy. And thank you for joining us today on Walking on the Ween Side. And thank you, Carol.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Welcome to It Matters Radio, where hosts Monica Brinkman and Carrie Hall bring you the very best of music from artists throughout the entire world. Be sure and catch their special musical guest interview every Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time. On most Tuesdays, you can take a walk on the Ween side, where host Kenneth Ween discusses current, meaningful, and even fun topics and issues with his very special guests. If you wish the best of music, entertainment, and conversation, join Monica, Carrie, and Ken, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time, live stream at Vaughn Live TV, It Matters Radio. And check them out on It Matters Radio on Facebook and YouTube. Why? Because you matter.